Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another installment of Show to Be with Mike G, the show of life, the show of Ken Loach, filmmaking, Scotch, Japanese whiskey, and so much more. I'm going to apologize in advance. It took me so long to put out this great conversation with someone who we all want to hear from. We want to learn more about his journey, Mr. Johnnie Mundell from Beam-Suntory. You've probably seen him at many different whiskey festivals talking about the amazing flavors of Japanese whiskey. He's had a very decorated life, a very interesting path to get here, and it's just lovely to talk to this guy. His presentations are some of the best I've ever seen, and in a sense make you uncomfortable. He encourages you to participate. He engages you in a way unlike anyone else I've ever seen in the whiskey industry. And now, behind the mic, sitting down, chatting with him, it's just a humble, generous, very thought-provoking guy. So, without further ado, I finally bring you this amazing conversation with Johnnie Mundell of Beam-Suntory.
Oh, well, my wife would say that I lied to her when we met. We had a very interesting courtship, given that I was hitchhiking across the US.
Yeah.
And
what year are we talking?
So my dad turned 60 in 2004. We took him to New York to celebrate his birthday.
Yeah.
So it's like his birthday's January 1st as well. So it's the 4th of January. I've got 4 days worth of clothes in a bag, and New York is on one of those like epic cold spells where they won't let you on the upstairs of the tour bus. Yeah. They're like frostbite warning, and we're like, we're Scottish, it's okay. and not that people in Scotland can deal with temperature that cold. We're just used to cold and wet, not epic cold. From there, some friends were going to go and work the Sundance Festival.
Sundance, no shit.
Yeah.
Just real quick, any affiliation with film or anything like that?
I was making a living any way I could, yeah. And I was making short films as often as possible. Have you sat down with Martin Duras?
No.
Martin was the Highland Park ambassador for 10 years.
Yeah.
And he and I made films together with one other guy. We were kind of like he was director, I was producer.
No shit, I had no idea.
Well, nobody knows because the films are no good and nobody's...
That's okay, that's in the past.
Nobody's seen them beyond a couple of viewings in Glasgow and sometime in 2001, 2002.
No way.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we're gonna absolutely get back to the hitchhiking, but a film guy, who strikes you, who's someone that kind of motivates you, inspires you aesthetically in terms of film. Danny Boyle comes to mind, yeah.
Yeah, very much so. He's had his ups and downs, and I think that's the thing that is strongest about him for me. It's the idea that he realized what his limitations were, sure. And I don't mean limitations in terms of his creativity. Right. I mean that. Like if you take, not to throw Star Wars in, but if you take the different Star Wars ideations that we've seen, like arguably it was at its best when the world was against Lucas and nobody knew he was a genius. Yeah. And I would say the same thing for Peter Jackson. Frustrates me a little bit because he took something, Lord of the Rings, that I believed in so strongly as a kid through the books, and he created the visual style, but he didn't close the circle. So when he then goes to make King Kong, it's like, how many T-Rexes do you want fighting the giant gorilla?
It's no yeah, you're right.
There's no limitation. So Boyle is this guy who, for me, went, here's unlimited budget, post all of his acclaim and success, like post Trainspotting, like a lifeless ordinary,
yeah, with
like
Ian McGregor and
he goes, and then The Beach, and he just goes
strange,
and he just goes, oh, I'm really not good with this. What I need a more defined box. Yeah, and I definitely relate to that.
It's like the rogue filmmakers working better when they have no budget and having to find places to shoot. So, this is what we're doing right now.
So that was my skill for our team. Like, this guy Ray wrote, Martin directed, and if you needed a fishing boat on the top of a mountain in the Isle of Skye, I knew who and how to make that happen.
Oh, that's amazing.
And that was
Fixer. Is that what they're called?
I was just hustling.
Yeah.
You know, my title was producer, but there was no money, so you weren't producing other than deciding what kind of candy bar Martin wanted to keep him sustained through a night shoot. So Boyle, yeah, definitely Boyle. And I like how he's come back around and he's like really defined who and how he's going to tell stories.
Very tight. Yeah, his movies are really, really specific and very tight.
But I have to say, probably one of my favorite guys is Ken Loach.
Really?
Yeah.
I've seen Ken. What's the one with Roddy McDowell? That is one of his first ones, isn't it? Where the guy goes to this school and he starts shooting everybody at the end of the movie. It's a really old. I think it's his first movie. I think it's Ken Loach's first movie. But
Kez
is the one.
Kez is the one. Kez is the one. For me, the one that spoke to me, the one where I kind of discovered him was Sweet 16.
I'm not familiar. It's good.
It's set in either Greenock or Gourock. I think it's Gourock. But either way, both towns are on the estuary west of Glasgow, the mouth of the River Clyde. They're both a lot of poverty, a lot of drugs. Life's tough. Yeah. And I remember watching it in. So we start looking at the end of the road trip across the country. I found myself in California, my uncle's sofa, and I'm watching Sweet 16 with this girl that I've met, and she'll become my wife. But Sweet 16's on the television with subtitles, and it's just like, yeah, it makes perfect sense because the act that for them that accent is so intense and so broad. But I really don't have favorites. Like when I was pursuing that, I always had a policy of go and see every movie.
Yeah, that's amazing. I
go
love
and see
that.
everything. You see everyone because even a freaking Transformers movie, you might see a way something was done and go, that was like I've walked out of horrible movies going like and written extensively about how something came together.
Sure.
So it's not really about favorites as much as I just like the art form. I like telling stories, and the trouble I had with it was you need so many people involved, like and so much money, and it's exhausting.
Sure.
Got interested in documentary and pursued that for a while, but the problem is, where do you close the loop? So one side you've got, hey, here's the story we're trying to tell.
Yeah.
You've got to get like 40 people in line, all working for free, keep them motivated.
Right.
A lot of fun but exhausting. And then you go, well, documentary in real life, and there's so many great stories, and this was before all those great documentaries. Like, it was before Michael Moore had his first success.
Sure, but then Blue Line was out, right? So what's his name? Errol Morris had stuff coming out. Are you familiar with Errol Morris?
No, I'm gonna.
So for us in the States, he's the quintessential Orson Welles of documentary filmmaking.
Okay.
He's the guy. So he made Fogs of War. He made Thin Blue Line. Just an interesting guy. But yeah, it's a hard thing to close those off.
How do you close the circle of the story?
Did you watch The Keepers at all on Netflix?
No.
Worth watching? Doesn't close it off. Great 8 episodes. Like, yes, we're getting down to the root of this fucking problem. Nope. Leaves you hanging after 8 episodes, and then there's no season 2. This happened in the 60s. These murders, right? It's very frustrating. So does it become unfulfilling in a sense for you?
I don't know. I just I got pregnant. So we got pregnant. She got pregnant. And life changed.
Yeah.
A lot of gaps in the story, but storytelling was something I was always really interested in.
Yeah.
Which is cool given what I'm doing for a living.
I think so, because you're having to, in a way, and we'll circle back, of course, to this whiskey chapter. I'm going to talk about film a little bit more here in a moment, but you're a spokesman, in a sense, to bring us, you're a conduit to Japan. If you think about it, you're kind of this guy that's traveling around and saying, obviously I'm not Japanese, I'm not diminutive. Hell, if I even have a short and kind of quiet voice, but I've got to bring this story to you guys.
Yeah, I also think my point of view from being a non-American who's come, settled, built a life. Came out in 2004.
Yeah.
And I've been living full time in California since 2005.
Wow.
So I've had the time and the opportunity to like not only get to there's so many cultures in America.
Right.
But if you just take Los Angeles as an example, like learning and figuring out Los Angeles and falling deeply in love with it has been its own journey. So I think I've got that eye where I'm always looking to try and understand a place through its geography, through its architecture, through its people.
Through a lens of a non-objective, non-subjective, and non-judgmental guy. If you think about it, right? You're capturing this culture as a man who's holding a camera in a way. You're just observing, right?
Yeah. Sans the camera. I'm not
Not literally the camera, right? But in a sense, like always a man that's kind of creating a frame.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be, yeah.
I can accept it. We're not good with compliments, Scottish people in general. Right? Yeah.
Well, you're terrible. Well, how dare you be bad at compliments?
It's one of those funny things. I've had to like focus when somebody says you like something's really good. It's almost like I have to turn a switch, like I'm turning a wheel, like a pressure valve, going, say thank you. The first thing you got to do is say thank you, because our go-to is you're wrong. And if somebody says something positive, complimentary, and you tell them they're wrong, you devalue their opinion.
Right.
So I have got to every day, twist this valve to say thank you very much for the compliment.
There's a fellow Scotsman who I've talked, and he was talking about how people are really brutal and blunt with each other in Scotland. Yep. Those pants look like shit. What are you doing, right? Like, why would you put that shirt with those shoes? I mean, they're so blunt, but not to be mean, but maybe to be frank and improve.
You were talking to a Scotsman and you got straight to how pants fit on him.
No, believe me, it took about 15 minutes, but it was still a journey of some sort.
Were his pants consistently too tight?
Well, he's fine, but we were talking about fashion at large, and then that became a conversation. I didn't realize how succinct and how perhaps brusque the Scots are.
Yeah, we do. So as we look at, we try and link that all together for the Japanese. I wrestled with who I was for the first year, and I felt the need to change because I had come through the ranks with the House of Suntory. I'd worked for them since. I'm struggling to pull the. I'm struggling to pull
early
the year
2000s?
No, much later. I think it was. I want to say 11, but it could have been 10. I think it was early 2011, and I worked through their importer and worked across a number of different whiskies, but had Suntory's Scotch whiskey book, and ultimately that became our responsibility. So we definitely had a familiarity, and Scotch is noisy. Like, there's a ton of Scotch ambassadors out there, especially at that time, and you felt the need to just go in and be the most Scottish.
Yeah.
I always try and tailored it to the idea of focusing on who's your master distiller. You're their representative.
Right.
My master distiller at the time was Ian McCallum, who's been an amazing, incredible, generous mentor.
Yeah.
And he will cringe at anything positive I say about him. And I love doing it in front of an audience. There's no reward doing it here right now, but in front of an audience, if we're co-presenting, talking about what his mentorship and his kindness means, and watch it when you see his face react to that, it's pure poetry.
Oh, it's amazing.
So
it's something like a wince, I suppose.
Oh yeah, we hate it. Yeah. So it's like almost taking points off each other by being kind and positive about the other one.
So actually, real quick, so you're a father of 3 girls?
3 daughters.
3 daughters. How would you want them to be able to accept compliments and feel that kind of positivity?
I think you need to learn how to. You absolutely need to learn how to do it. Yeah. As a Scot, it's really tough though.
It's so strange. Or it's not strange. It's just different, right? We're fucking jerking each other off on the streets. Oh, you're so great. You did this, and this. When we didn't really even earn it, and you guys are on the other side of that, where it's like.
I think if I go back in time to what I thought of America back then versus now, there's an impression, and again, unfortunately your impression is made up from the 2 or 3 people that you have experience of, right? Right. But there's an impression that there's a positivity, great.
Yeah.
There's a can-do spirit, absolutely fantastic, but it can bubble over into insincerity.
Sure.
For us. Now, having lived here, I don't find that anymore. It's like any place. You just met that one person that has that.
Right.
And my opinion is broadly that we have all kinds of people in all kinds of places. It just depends on where you find yourself in any given day. And the mix of people that you meet could be anyone of any different direction.
Right. It's almost random in some sense. The thing that I was kind of looking at when I was researching a bit and seeing your academic upbringing.
Academic upbringing?
Horticulture? Is that really like plant sciences? Did you study that for a bit?
Yeah, and
But I don't understand how that turns into either filmmaking and or a whiskey guy.
well, yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It makes perfect sense,
We're
actually.
both confused, right? I'm just making sure.
I'm
You have a
confused.
look on your
I-
face that's
I-
like, what the fuck?
I have a look on my face going, I'm trying to remember if I've said that to anyone or where that would be.
Oh, I can't tell you now.
Interesting.
Did you have an interest in the land? How about that?
Yeah, I grew up on a farm. Sheep farm, southwest Scotland, half an hour from Glasgow. Went to school in Glasgow, so I had to deal with that dynamic of a very like polar extremes of like farm and land
Metropolitan, right?
versus it wasn't much the metropolitan, it was the mindset of the people. And
Yeah.
like I went to, by any standard, I went to a really good school.
Yeah.
And I hated it. I had a horrible negative experience there ultimately.
What was so bad about it?
I have in my early life, I mean, you know, when there's a choice and the choice is really obvious, and most times you would choose the least resistance and the way to fit in.
Make it easy, right?
Yeah. You know, from that, from the age of like 12, 13,
Yeah.
right when things are getting tough, I didn't make choices that allowed me to fit in. I always would find the choice that would in some way like isolate me.
Yeah. Make you an outsider?
I don't know that it wasn't some random outsider thing, but it was like, you know, I had a really tough time at school.
Yeah.
I suffered mercilessly at the hands of some bullies. And instead of taking the choice that could have removed me from that, I always like seemed to just like pred on. Yeah.
But you must have been, I mean, you're a real tall guy.
That happened in my last year of school.
Oh, no shit. So you're small until you're big enough not to be able to beat the shit out of him anymore.
It's not about being a shit. First of all, you have to understand the dynamic of the school. It was an all boys school.
Okay.
So I'm living a rural upbringing on a sheep farm southwest of Scotland.
Yeah.
And I'm going to a boys only school in the west end of Glasgow that up until what you would call, so primary 6 for us would be 7th grade.
Sure.
For you guys, because you take the kindergarten year add it on. And up until that point, or would it be 5th grade? Am I going the wrong way?
Yeah, either way.
Either
But I get the like general sense.
somebody will figure it out. You're wearing knee-high socks, shorts, a blue blazer, and a little cap, and you're wearing that every month of the year.
It's the uniform, right?
It's the uniform. So the bigger kids have got these like nylon, like school color striped scarves. They're mixing them around in slush and cold, wet water, and they're like flick. And it's not like that. You know, it's not like you hear it in like the boarding school version where there's like boys getting held over fires and all the hazing stuff that happens there. But it's a very, it was an all male oppressive, very negative, dark environment.
That's crazy. I didn't think about that.
And in my final year, I came in to start school roughly the size that you see me today, which is, you know,
You're a force to be reckoned with. I think physically, I wouldn't get into an altercation with you. It'd be foolish of me.
Well, I'm not a good fighter.
Still, you got weight on me. You got reach.
I'm incredibly effective in an altercation that involves one person hurting another.
Yeah.
And I can break that. I'm absolutely ineffective if I lose my temper to the point of anger and want to physically hurt someone. I am the most ineffective lumbering beast.
You just see red, and it's not like.
Well, it's not that you see red. It's just that you're just. I'm not effective. I'm not coordinated in a aggressive way.
Yeah.
So if my physicality's taught me one thing, it's like I'm really good if somebody's getting hurt. Like if somebody pulls an axe. Like I've been in the distance that we're staying today.
Sure.
I've been in a bar, and this girl jumped over the top of me and started banging another girl's head on the table. And we were in a very nice part of town, not the kind of part you would expect this.
Yeah.
So me and a gentleman called Steve stood up, and we kind of walked this girl to the door, to the point where we found that she was with a gentleman, and Steve was being clawed to face, back, head by the girl. And I'm facing a gentleman exactly the distance I'm sitting from you here right now. And he was the size difference between the two of us. And he reaches his hand behind his back and he pulls out an axe.
What the fuck? A little hatchet?
Like if you were splitting wood,
Yes,
but like a 4-inch blade.
Okay.
With a heavy handle. And he goes, so he's got the hand in front of him. So you put your fist in front of me with me like this, okay?
Yeah,
right?
got it. Okay.
And he goes, I've got the distance from putting your fist extended in front of you to bring it back.
Sure.
To make a decision. And my first decision is, I'm going to get the hell out of here. Right? This is not a good place to be.
Right.
Let's remove myself from the cramped conditions of the entrance to this bar. But I'm like, Steve's got his back to him, and Steve's fighting what may or may not be this person's significant other.
Yeah.
And you have to go, what am I going to do? And in the split second he goes to there, I go, there's only one way to go, and I have to go forward.
Absolutely.
I have to, and I played rugby, so I was used to taking a hit, and yeah, I bludgeoned him to the ground with my shoulder and laid him out, and somebody came in and kicked the axe away, and that was the end of it. But it's not a... Yeah, look, I'm big.
Yeah,
I'm pretty strong, but it's... I think aggression's a thing that needs to be... It's mental. Everything is mental. It has to be driven. Like, it's one thing having a big vehicle to drive through a wall. If I know that I have no choice, I'm going to drive my body through that guy to stop Steve getting axed, right? But it doesn't work if I was ever wanting to do it for another reason, like just for aggression or negativity. So I'm not. My physicality is a really funny thing. I don't think of myself as being that big. We're sitting here and we feel the same size, and I'm looking out. I'm not. I still catch myself today. You see photographs and you're like, oh wow, I'm bigger than everybody else in the photograph, and I'm not that big for anyone that's going, what, how big is this guy? I'm 6'4.5".
Yeah.
And I'm I float between 228 and right now I'm sitting at 244, but that's lack of mobility and
sure. The beard's at least 5 pounds.
Yeah, so
it's a dense beard. Talking about being resilient to cold.
Well, that's
that beard.
So I was never interested in fashion, but I used to do lots of crazy things with my hair, and when the hair falls out the top, you feel the need to start doing something with the only part that you have.
How was were you, I think about, so at what point, right, so you do the boys' school thing, which is kind of a little bit of a foreign concept in the States. There's Catholic girl schools, which is an amazing prototypical fantasy for most males here, so that's a good thing, but there's not a lot of boys' schools necessarily. So getting off and be able to go into the uni in Glasgow, how did that feel? Pretty good? Wheels are off?
So this is where we bring back in the horticulture.
Yeah.
So I'd finished school. I had, let's just say that I had made peace with my bullies in a way that they weren't going to fuck with me anymore. We had
I want to see the book on that. I want to read that story.
That's a longer story.
Sure.
We've had enough violent stories, but that was.
No, but there's some resolution there.
It's one of three fights I've ever had in my life that didn't happen on a rugby pitch as part of a contest.
Wow.
But it stopped. It stopped people messing with me. It eliminated it, which was a relief. And it set me up to go to college. And at college, I just didn't know who I was or what I wanted to do. And in retrospect, I often think I should have gone, joined the Merchant Navy and just traveled the world in some way. Like, I like the fraternity that you get from working on a project together, which if we link back in the film thing, that idea of you got a team of people or, I think I've always liked team sports. Sure. Like, I like community. Yeah. I like working with a bunch of people.
Was there any pressure from the folks at all to do one thing or another?
No, there really wasn't. They were great in that way. They wanted. I think there was pressure in that they didn't know. They didn't know if I was going to figure it out, and they were worried.
I see.
Excuse me a second. They really didn't have that dialed in.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't have it dialed in. In the process of the last 5 years of my schooling, my dad had, the farm was declining. So there's an added pressure that my parents are spending a lot of money for me to go to this school, and I'm hating it. And I don't think the school environment would have changed. I think it was something I just, at that age, I was going through.
Yeah.
I was very much, I was a target whatever situation I seemed to put myself in. So Dad had started a landscaping business, and kind of ran it in conjunction with a farm. And at the time I was finishing school, he'd gone full scale. It was a huge hit, massive success.
Oh, great.
So he's got this landscaping business. But then, and I'm like, okay, well, I'll go and study horticulture. I like the outdoors.
Yeah.
I used to talk a lot about this in the Scotch world. I talk a lot about the geography and the seasonality of Scotland. Like, you guys are so used to, wherever part of your states you're in, you're very used to the differences in light level between summer and winter. Right?
Yeah.
Los Angeles, one of the things that took adjusting for me is that it doesn't fluctuate as much. It's dark by 5 o'clock right now.
Right.
You know, maybe it'll go to almost 8 o'clock in the summer, but that's it.
Yeah.
Where I live in Scotland, we're on the same latitude as southern Alaska and Moscow.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay.
Now, we don't have the depth of temperature that both those places would have in your imagination, because of all the warm weather in the Gulf. Gulf Stream fires diagonally across the Atlantic, and it warms our country. So if you think about all the Scandinavian countries and the sun and the snow that they live in, and that idyllic Arctic lifestyle, we don't have that. We just have this wet cloud of oppressive, damp rain. But in the summer, the sun doesn't set till 10:30, 11 o'clock at night.
Oh, so it's actually quite bright. I didn't realize that.
So we have this mad summer. So it's always brought me into summers where I'm wanting to be at my parents' farm. No matter what I was doing in life, like, I would find myself staying at the farm and living that kind of life.
Yeah.
In the winter, you lose the sunshine. So for me, it was like, okay, the sun's gone. You need to go to the fireside. So the fireside then brought you into the towns and the cities, and you would go to bars and clubs, and you would just come together with people. Now, whether there was a fire you were sitting around or not, you were just with a group of people, and it was dark and cold and miserable outside, and it didn't matter because you found your energy from that community.
Sure.
So summers, outdoors, get away from it.
Yeah, because it's like it creates your family, and it's the light outside and all of that.
Winters were just get deep into the.
Do you develop a complex having this duality? I would drive me nuts.
I think it does. I think we're great until. So in the winter, you're talking about sun is down by 3:30, and I don't mean like the glow in the sky. I mean pitch black by 3:30.
Wow.
I remember every day leaving school to get the bus, to then get the train, to then get picked up, to driven back to the farm, and it was like an hour and a half long journey to get home every day. And by the time you were halfway between the school and the train station, it's pitch black.
Done. Wow, I had no idea.
And then in the morning, you're coming in on a train, and the sun is not coming up until 9 o'clock in the morning.
It's only up, what is that, 6 hours? Something like that.
And if it's raining the whole day, if it's cloudy, nothing. So that energy and experience that you supplement as a post-18-year-old in Glasgow, you supplement the lack of light for people.
Interesting.
You then find yourself going hard until New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
Biggest night of the year in Scotland is Hogmanay, is 31st of December.
Really?
Massive party. And immediately after that, nobody has any money. And it's a long road through January, February, and March.
Yeah.
And it really takes until you start watching the leaves swell on the trees. And it's not just the leaves bursting out. You can actually start to look at the crown of a tree, and you start seeing it gets hazier towards the tips. And that's the buds swelling on trees. And different tree species they'll start to bud at different times.
Right.
I remember an ash tree in my parents' garden. It was always the last tree. So like everyone else would be in bright, full green bloom, right?
Yeah.
Leaves everywhere. And this ash tree, those black tip buds on an ash would just be getting like the size of a quarter inch, half inch.
But symbol.
And it was always the last tree to burst out. So for me, that period, that like first quarter of the year when the world, like the land is going through this transformation, okay? You're waiting on spring.
Yeah.
And the energy that spring's going to bring, the flowers, like that burst of life. And it all is tied into the ratio of light to dark through the day. That's what's going to be the trigger for all the plants to bud.
So I can see the horticultural that coming through and it being of interest. Yeah.
So and it was interesting. It's definitely an interest for my dad. He's really talented in terms of shapes and space and how to make a space flow. in terms of the lines, and that's something I think I've gotten from him. He's very quiet.
Yeah.
He's not much of a communicator.
Really?
He finds it easier at all times to just do it himself.
Yeah.
And that was a definite contention, because when you're watching your dad running a team of guys and not communicating, I wrestle with the idea of whether I'm a good communicator or not, even now.
Even though that's your job in a sense, right?
Yeah. Well, I know I'm really good at throwing out information.
Right.
Like, communication is two-way.
Sure.
And I think a big part of what I try and do when I'm presenting is to take in from the audience, to translate,
it's like a reciprocal kind of thing.
Yeah,
right?
I'm trying to cremate. You've been to one event that I've done.
I liked it a lot.
I'm trying to create a flow between me and the audience. But true communication is listening. Listening is more than you speak, right?
Right.
And I don't know that I'm always. I think my wife would agree with that. I'm probably not as good as I think I am.
Yeah.
My mother is an amazing woman, a doer, a get things done kind of person. But she's also a talker. So
real quick, I'm revisiting the '60s as these amazing lights as they set up for this Glenlivet event behind you. It's actually amazing.
I don't think anybody could imagine that through my words I was getting different colored lights flashed right in my eyes as we were talking.
There was a green, there was a pink, there was a yellow and blue. Actually, it's quite astonishing. If they do it again, I'm taking a picture because it's really a riveting picture of you back in this psychedelic, almost 60s-esque era. I did attend one of your education seminars, and you are a very commanding force in the room. You demand maybe too strong of a word, but you demand interaction. You demand feedback. It is unsettling in the best possible way. You're like a professor that knows exactly which student is putting their head on the table, and you will not have that shit. Is that intentional for you?
Yes. Totally. We're in a world right now, and looking at your catalog of work, there are thousands of brand ambassadors in this country.
Yes.
When I started in the business, there was a lot of Scotch ambassadors.
Yeah.
And the whiskey industry and the cocktail industry were very separate. Now, I've watched the fusion of both worlds. I've watched everybody take everybody very seriously.
Yeah.
That wasn't the way it was. There were very few Scotch whiskey people working with the cocktail community.
Yeah.
In 2011, it was remote and distant. There's an audience of whiskey collectors. This still needs to be serviced,
right.
And in some ways, I think brands are very focused right now on chasing the new audience.
Sure.
And they do
where the money's at. Yeah.
Well, it is where the money's at. But you know what? When the cycle changes, the people that were there before will still be the ones that are there, and they will remember. So I think you have to do both. I think you have to take care of both audiences.
I'm going to go a little deep here for a second.
Okay.
Or self-proclaimed deep. You've got some power in these rooms. When you are educating, talking about the fine whiskeys of Japan, of Suntory and Beam, you're the controlling the dynamic. You're the maestro. And it gives you this power maybe that you've reclaimed in fucking dealing with those bullies, right? I mean, you now are in control. It's kind of a nice change of pace, I'd imagine. I don't know if you've ever thought about that. Perhaps it's...
I wouldn't have made the association through all the way back to school.
Yeah.
But I won't argue. No, I couldn't argue your point. It's definitely... when I'm looking at what was going on, like I'm saying, when I started, Scotch was busy.
Yeah.
Okay, and I was a raw kid. I had a few people in the industry bring me into that circle. So on the one hand, you and I met at a more traditional whiskey tasting event, but on the second hand, we're sitting at a cocktail conference right now.
Yeah.
So this is for me a recent fusion, where both worlds are talking to each other, and you transcend both worlds, and I think so do I.
Absolutely.
Scotch whiskey had a hard time. It's been a bumpy road for them. They're late to that, even though if you look at brands or whiskey or categories of spirits, the number of ambassadors working on that category, Scotch is Scotch is kind of stable.
Yeah.
There's probably a few more right now, but it hasn't seen the dramatic spike in growth because we always had the need to go out and...
It was already popular, ultimately, right? It's not mezcal, right?
It wasn't about the popularity, but it was like every brand needed that person out telling their story.
Right.
Okay? And the whiskey makers are too busy now. Yeah. They're making the whiskey, so this category has thrived. It used to be just retired people from the distillery that were sent out. Now it's an active job. There's, each brand... All the big brands have 2 or 3 across the country.
Different personalities, different heights, different backgrounds, Scots, non-Scot. I mean, it's all a big mix. It's very interesting to see these guys touring through.
So, but it was always not, for me, it was always noisy. So what I saw the most was, here are the 3 unique selling points of my brand.
Yeah.
Now, I never had one brand to focus on. So how do you come in with a brand like Auchentoshan and say, here are the 3 unique selling points of Auchentoshan,
right? And
say that's what makes the whiskey so great, when then you have Bowmore and Glengarry and Glenrothes and Glengrant, and those 3 points for one are not gonna jive.
Yeah.
So I started off by doing portfolio but I really got dialed into doing portfolio education, and at the time that was where I found my bridge to the cocktail community, because they wanted to know more. And there was all these there was so many misunderstandings.
Sure.
And I found myself just driven to going, let's just create a footprint that helps you understand the whole thing, and you can insert your Scotch that you like, and to fulfill my purpose for my company, because I was the person that led you on this journey. Maybe there's going to be some kind of favorability for my brand on the back end, right? That's because ultimately it's a job. I'm trying to promote these brands. But I did it by going category education. And I realized that if you're going to go category education, you can't just go, this is what I think. You have to read the room. You have to go around the room and get dialed in and get a sense of, who are you, Mike?
Engage
what do you know?
Directly.
And it doesn't matter if you could like Scotch, you could like a style of Scotch, you could hate Scotch. Yeah. If you can give me something that I watch and I feel when people are talking. Yeah. And when they light up the way you've seen me go up and down, and you've triggered a couple of things in me that we don't talk about on a daily basis, and you're prodding them because you see the reactions in my face. I'm doing the same thing.
Wait,
with
so
an audience.
You're doing it to me?
No, I can't do it to you.
I'm putting this hood on, Johnny, because I can't.
But when you're talking about that presentation, for me, it's really important to build that. Why do we drink? Why do we go and do these tastings? Yeah. Is it to understand the product? Because that's really not that interesting. You could find that information on the internet now. Sure. We go to these things to connect with other people. Yeah. So for me, the whiskey has always been secondary to creating a common feeling, like a mood within the room. Yeah. So when I am being controlling and demanding of an audience, it's with the intention of trying to get them to open up a little bit to help them make connections. Whiskey Fest is one of the most established things that we do in terms of that big tasting room and then those master classes. You can't think of a more sterile environment in terms of a classroom in a ballroom in a hotel somewhere in America. Right. When you can take that room and turn that around and make them make connections, and I've got lots of little tricks I've learned over the years that I do it. Yeah. But I still do the same thing that I did in that space where you saw me, where I'm trying to break down barriers and get them to open up to each other. And yes, I need to be, I remember in one of my classes at school, we had a class called Modern Studies, just like kind of politics.
Wait, you say boring studies?
Modern Studies, politics, current affairs. And I remember a quote from somebody that I don't remember the name of, and I remember them saying, democracy is a really bad system of government. Trouble is, there's nothing better. Okay? When you get in these situations, you need a leader, you need a guide. Sure. You can't have, if we're going to sit around and taste 10 whiskeys and go on a journey to try and understand some concepts that have some weight and history behind them, we have to create some kind of authority. And I don't...
You're the director in that room. You know what I mean? You are setting those actors or these consumers.
Well, that's my school. I do a school play version now as well, where I will actually assign roles and give people characters.
You built the tree.
I build the trees. I used to throw giant maps on the floor. Yeah. I used to run stills.
That's amazing.
Anything to learn through non-monotony and auditory, like tactile things. Like I don't like even the visuals. Like I don't like PowerPoint as a medium. I'm not efficient in how I use it. Like the best PowerPoint people are ones that can put an image, but the dialogue, the words are never on the image.
Exactly. Yes.
And I'm not good enough at that. I'm better at painting the same image with words than I am with I can't sync up the images to the words because the words are different every time.
Sure.
I'm reacting to the room and reading the people, and I find that more powerful.
Absolutely.
For the audience as well as for myself.
So it begs the question then, why whiskey? It's a lovely category, many different types, but for you, what resonated? How did you connect with whiskey itself?
I think I asked that question. That's usually how I'll begin. Like, where did you make a connection? Not what do you think is the favorite or the coolest?
Right. But how did you find a piece of yourself in whiskey? Because that's ultimately what you wouldn't do it if it wasn't part of you.
Any spirit reflects the people and the lands where it comes from. Like with Scotch, I would talk a lot about the history and the heritage.
Yeah.
They're trying to make whiskey reflecting their teacher and the person that made the whiskey before them.
Yeah.
So I'm from that land. I know that place. I've got family from my dad grew up on the mainland just next to Isla.
Yeah.
My cousins live on Isla. So I've got a huge connection to that side of the business through them. The place, the spirit itself was late. Like I remember taking bottles of Drambuie to parties when I was 15 because fundamentally it's a bunch of sugar and a little bit of whiskey.
Tastes pretty good.
But it's too sweet for me now.
Yeah.
But at the time it was like, this is great. And it was obscure enough, and it probably wasn't that any different from the Mad Dog 2020 or whatever. A
little more sophisticated, perhaps.
Well,
but you're right, and it's not blue.
Remember, I went to an all-boys school. I was finding very hard to establish how to be sophisticated in front of a lady.
Yeah.
Very late to that. So
me too, actually. I don't know how I've been married twice. I really don't.
Well, you're braver than me because I'm not doing it twice. I went from there to not drinking for a long time. Took rugby really seriously. Yeah. So I gave up drinking at 17.
Really?
Which is, I know, ironic given the legalized drinking laws of 18 in the UK, but I gave up when I was 17.
I hope you get the blue behind me too. I mean, this is an amazing piece. I wish people could see that. You look really good under blue light. I'm just telling you right now. It looks quite wonderful.
Thank you very much. You need to go behind there. Well, do you want me to shush or you're whispering? You may as well talk, dude. You're here. Fine, you're with us. You can join us.
You need to get back.
Hold on. We're gonna have to. What's your name?
My name is Stephen Reyna.
All right, Stephen Reyna.
Local musician.
Stephen, get over here and.
Obviously, we have lots in common.
Can I place this light for you, Stephen?
Oh, that'd be amazing. It's a bustling place here at the San Antonio Cocktail Conference 2018. How's that? Is that good?
Enjoy your interview, guys.
Oh man, you look amazing. Now I gotta take a picture of this.
There you go.
He does look good.
What are you guys prepping
good.
for, Stephen?
It's a cocktail conference.
Well, we're here for attending, but specifically, you're throwing blue, pink, and purple lights up all around this room.
People that are with the conference, they have colors they want to have their room.
Interesting.
There's a green room downstairs. There's a red room. There's a blue room.
We're in the blue room, I'm assuming. Okay.
No other room I'd rather be in, to be honest.
Okay.
Blue is my color. Absolutely is. But it looks good.
Stephen, will you come and join me?
Oh, look at that.
You're going to be photographing.
Stephen Reyna. Amazing. Got it. Thanks.
Thank you. Cheers. Okay, train of thought went out the window.
No, but it's okay because we got blue lights. We've been drinking cognac. I mean, honestly, there's no better way to spend an afternoon with you.
Cheers.
Can you think about that? There's no better way.
We could be walking.
That's a good point. It's hard to record and walk. You ever try that?
No.
Real exceedingly difficult. But ultimately, Scotch pays homage to your homeland. You are very interested in, I mean, you've painted an amazing landscape of Scotland for me too.
You asked me why Scotch. It's the spirit that reflects where I come from.
Yeah.
And that's the beginning. That's the entry point.
Sure.
And I think there was a time and place where a lot of spokespeople, salespeople, ambassadors were self-conscious if they weren't Scottish and working on the brand. I would hear people apologize for it. So I find myself with our importer, and they have a bourbon. And we have one bourbon, and then suddenly we have two bourbons that I'm responsible for. And I do remember a fear about that.
Really?
I remember talking to a couple of people that had I trusted, and they were like, Johnny, you love whiskey, right? And I was like, yeah, I really love whiskey. And learning about Kentucky and bourbon was pushing me beyond what I knew. So when I started full time on the Scotches, I'd already worked for Billy Grant. I'd worked for Edrington. So I worked on the big brands, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And that perspective was such a useful tool. I would go and see every presenter present that I could. Even if they weren't 100% comfortable with it, it's still, again, like they were talking about the movies, you learn something from the good and the bad ones.
You're right, and I love the fact you'll take the good with the bad and you'll still spend money on a fucking shitty movie. That's amazing. It's noble of you to do that.
Well, it's the same with watching people do what we do, present. And I've gone, for the beginning, it was as many presentations as I could get to. And I always got something from it. Moving from Scotch into bourbon just gave me more to then give to the people that I was being asked to talk with.
Sure.
Because if you knew bourbon, I could now build bridges from bourbon to the type of Scotch. And it's the diversity of Scotch that's always spoken to me, the different styles.
Yeah.
I've never been, like I say, one brand focus. I've always had that full kind of.
Well, I get the sense you're a Renaissance man. I hope that's not a derogatory term, but the fact
I'll need to look it up in a dictionary to
let's just
get a
assume
definition.
it's a semi-compliment, so you don't have to shrug it off too much. It just means I feel like you've got a deep interest in multicultures. In terms of spirits, you're not pegging anyone out. Like you're open to learning and tasting and being.
We're drinking cognac right now because if you can teach me something about cognac that I can apply and make it relative to when I'm teaching about Japanese whiskey.
Yeah.
So I've done Scotch a lot. I'm now doing bourbon as well.
Yeah.
But you did ask what was the initial trigger.
Sure. Is there actually a specific moment for you?
There is. I remember trying a Lagavulin Distillers Edition, which is the sherry cask finish that they offer, from I think 94 or 95. And that was me going, oh, I like this. Prior to that, my friends and I had acquired 17 bottles of various blended Scotch whiskies at a young age during an ill-conceived rugby club fundraising auction that allowed us to acquire these bottles. We destroyed them over a series of camping trips that summer, and it was poison. It was absolute poison. My body wasn't ready for it.
Yeah.
But by that, I think it would have been the early 2000s I would have experienced that bottle.
Yeah.
And
still think about it? The one that got away?
No, I didn't get away. It was the trigger for me going, this is amazing. And it was the entry point into a journey.
Yeah.
Because I had given up alcohol, as I said. And it was a very slow journey back into it. Again, with a more mature palate and a greater interest.
Yeah.
Scotch gave me so much. Bourbon gave me greater ability to communicate with an American whiskey audience, and I find myself all the way up to 2000 and let me see, 3 years now. So 2015, I find myself asked if I would be interested in applying for the job on the Suntory whiskies.
Yeah.
There'd been a lot of pieces moving in between. There was a lot of great event concepts, always hinged around bringing people together. I got into the idea of I hated giving whiskey away, so I started asking for things from the audience in order to give them the free samples. A whole series of events called Whiskey for Words.
Yeah.
In fact, for 5 years with a couple of partners, I've been running a whiskey and poetry salon in Los Angeles.
Really? I didn't realize that.
So the idea is that you want to come to the event. Yeah. I'm going to get everyone in a somewhat circle. Sure. Again, creating the illusion
Semi-circle. How about
No. Semi doesn't work. Let's just say it's not a perfectly formed, but it's a circular...
Amoebic.
Yeah, amoebic shape. And we used to throw a lot of candles in the middle and a couple of bottles of whiskey and a bunch of glasses.
Yeah.
And everyone would get a glass of whiskey, and I would explain the whiskey. And at the point where I'd finished, I would then ask people to recite poetry. And once I started seeing the glasses get to the point that they were empty, I would stop the poets, and then I would introduce the next whiskey. And it's been going for 5 years now.
That's an amazing concept.
It's Whiskey for Words, and the idea is I didn't want to give away free samples.
You do the poetry as well, though, yeah?
I have never recited a poem.
Oh, that is...
I do enough talking at these events.
Oh, see, this is unfair, though.
Well, you can... my wife would argue that with you, but it's honestly, it's more important that my role is to facilitate and keep the feel, because
but you've got to have some creative and poetic bones in your body. I know you do.
I talk a lot. There's enough words coming from me, and sometimes they have meaning, sometimes they don't. There's no need to increase on that. But so Scotch was great, but I had gotten to a point where I was like, okay, what else can I do?
Right.
And this opportunity comes up, and it really triggered by the American whiskey experience. Imagine if I could have learned all these things about Scotch.
Yeah.
Learned all this about American whiskey. Imagine if I had the chance now to go to Japan. And that's where I find myself. I
almost consider you greedy.
I'm sorry?
Greedy. Bringing all of these things in, these pillars, these titans of whiskeys.
I'm very lucky.
Yeah.
I'm incredibly lucky.
How about, so here's an interesting question. Yeah, we understand how compliments go with the Scots. Mm-hmm. How does humility and feeling blessed and charmed and lucky, how does that fit into it? Is that something that you can easily and freely talk about?
Yes, well, we touched on Ian.
Yeah.
Okay. My chief blender at Suntory is Shinji Fukuya-san. Watching and listening to him has been... He would never accept me saying that. He's an absolute rock star. And when the rock star doesn't actually need to say anything.
Yep.
They just walk in the room and they sit and they're a presence. That's who he is.
It's amazing.
Again, so many incredible teachers, but the humility that the Japanese have in so many aspects of life and culture. Getting to be someone that's traveled and learned America, mainly through my wife and children.
Sure.
But now I'm traveling further and I'm observing Japan. Now Suntory they're not going to give you, this was the bumpy first year, because I just wanted everything. I wanted to know everything.
Right.
And there's a time and place for them on when you will get given the
in due time, right?
You will get given the appropriate education at the right time. And I'm still early in this journey. They've known me because I actually learned more. I learned a lot, not more, about Scotch from a gentleman called Mike Miyamoto.
Yeah.
Mike was the production manager at Yamazaki Distillery, production manager at Hakushu Distillery, and he was the gentleman that Suntory sent over when they acquired Morris and Bowmore Distillers. Mm-hmm. He was the gentleman that they sent over to understand what the Scots were doing from a distillation point of view. So he has a massive impact in the Japanese whiskey world, but he also has a long legacy on Scotches too.
Wow.
Mike had taught me a lot about understanding the distilleries that I already thought I knew, but understanding them from his point of view and the Japanese point of view. So we already had that bond.
Yeah.
Now I find myself with that established relationship with the opportunity to move into the Japanese whiskey, and it wasn't decided. I still had to go through an interview process, and one of the things was I'm often referred to as Johnny the Scot. Mainly, my last name's not particularly Scottish sounding, and I played in a rugby team in Santa Monica, and there was 3 guys called Johnny, and they called me Johnny the Scot. So it
clicks.
It clicks, and it's easy, right?
It is. Thinking about these whiskeys, you were at 7 Grand in Austin recently, and we got to try and dissect some amazing, fucking incredible, privileged whiskeys. I would have to call it that. Thinking about the lineup, Suntory Beam, the Japanese whiskeys specifically, thinking about that lineup, not what's your favorite. That's a bad question, but what is the most challenging yet rewarding whiskey that you have in the Suntory catalog?
Challenging yet rewarding.
Something maybe you don't get, but then when you give it a try, you really do get it.
So there's not one liquid that speaks to that for me.
Yeah.
It's a system. We touched on Scotch.
Yeah.
It's all tradition, heritage.
Sure.
Okay? When I'm working on Suntory whiskies, the beginning is always Scotch. The inspiration was Scotch. Now, there's different houses within Japanese whiskey, just like with any other whiskey category.
Right.
And each house has their history and their point of view. Our story begins with our founder, Shinjiro Tori, looking at Scotland. And it's what he saw that fascinates me, because he saw what I had missed when I started working in the industry. I was discreetly, not very, pouring honey in Americans' ears, implying heavily that single malt was greatly superior to blend. And that's a common theme within the industry.
Of
we would
course.
never, no brand would ever go out and say, "Oh, one is better than the other."
Right.
But we can imply, and this has been going on. Like the investment in brands in the US from Scotland was all single malt driven. There are great people working on blends. There are great blends, but the investment was always single malt driven.
Of course.
Tory looked at Scotland and didn't see a distillery or a scale of production. He saw total business. He saw everything.
Yeah.
He saw production. He saw brokerage. He saw blenders. He saw brands being created out of famous grocery store owners. I say famous not at the time.
Right.
He saw the whole thing. And he took it back to Japan. Now, he'd had help building the first distillery, but ultimately, he really clearly saw the needs of the people in Japan and what they were looking for. And he saw a scale of operation. He saw something in Scotland that I don't think I had seen my whole
Even
career.
being a native. Yeah.
In the industry. I ignored it because I was blinded by my role to promote my single malts.
Yeah.
And when you look at that, it's amazing that you can be in the industry as long as you can and just go, I just got schooled on something by a Japanese guy.
Better him than me.
And that's been the most like that challenging but also rewarding piece of this.
That's amazing.
Like looking at their focus, their attention to detail. They're not trying to recreate anything. They're pursuing perfection.
Yeah.
They don't believe they'll get there, but they're pursuing it. And to get to see that in action, I am not skilled at speaking up for myself, right?
Yeah.
In the way that I'm probably... It's uncomfortable. We touched on that earlier,
Sure.
right? There's just an uncomfortable. But if I'm like, this person here is amazing, I can wax lyrical about that person and why they're amazing. I can sell other people and other things. But it's not selling, it's belief.
Right.
It's really amazing for me to get to do that because I don't think, well, they will not, would not, could not, it's not in their nature to stand up and roar about who they are.
It's almost like you guys it would be the perfect buddy cop movie, right? Because
I hope they feel that way. Maybe. Again, a lot of questions come up about the history and the heritage, and I've got that covered.
Sure, of course.
And then if somebody says Scotch is better than Japanese, I'm like, really? Can you explain to me what it is in Scotch? And there's nobody in the US industry that I wouldn't be able to have that conversation with. Explain to me why, and get to a point, not just a blanket statement.
Right.
I've got the credibility on both sides, so it's been amazing to learn another aspect to the whiskey business and to see how and where they're pushing the envelope.
Right.
Now, I don't know everything.
No, of course not. Who does?
And they're not going to give me everything straight away, but we are on this journey.
I love that it's like, okay, you're going to get just this much. A bite-sized amount of knowledge. And then it's going to take you 6 months, and you'll get the next bite-sized chunk of knowledge.
There's what they give me, and then there's also what I pursue myself.
Sure.
They're very big on hospitality. If you want to understand how to behave in Japan, imagine you're at your grandparents' house. Yeah. We can all, it's relatable, right? Mm-hmm. And it's easy for me when I'm thinking about it. I just imagine my grandparents in the room.
Yeah.
How do I want to behave? How do I want to come across?
Makes sense.
They have the same idea of hospitality and taking care of each other as if you're from any part of America. We can all identify with that.
Yeah.
And Scotland. Like we have these inbuilt things of just taking care of each other and respect. It exists in every culture. They're not aliens. That's what they thrive off of.
I think it's really important to know and to realize that we're all very similar. We feel so far apart. Miles, thousands of miles apart, worlds apart. But yet, we all want to care about one each other. We really do, despite what Twitter says or Facebook. So I've got 2 questions left for you. I know this is a bustling... I mean, we're in the midst of a fucking Glenlivet activation, apparently, and you've got a blue LED lights here, right? It's amazing. How we were able to do this and keep our cool, Johnny, I don't know.
Well, here's the thing. There's nobody from Glenlivet that could remove me from this seat.
You've seen them; they're all about 5'2", 5'3".
There's one guy in Scotland, and if he wouldn't even have to speak, he would just wink at me, and I would move for him. But there's nobody in the US market that could get me to move.
Perfect. So we feel safe. This is great. And perhaps I'll take a couple of these bottles off this activation wall over here in just a second. But 2 questions. The first one is, what would one expect? I love the way you present. It confronts me, but it's good because then I am forced to listen and interact with you, which is a brilliant mechanism of education and teaching. But in the class tomorrow, talking about malt, I think. How's that going to go? What could someone expect in this class tomorrow?
Jordan Felix.
Jordan from Westward.
Call it Westland. He really likes it when you do that.
Oh my god, dude! I've had to. You know how many mnemonic devices I've had to do to get it straight?
Believe me, learning Japanese names. They had a drinking game just for me.
Yeah.
That it crucified me in order to get it right. Jordan's an old friend. I've spent a lot of time in various whiskey bars, and I'm always looking for who's running the bar, and who their apprentice is,
Sure.
and it always exists. Tommy Cluse built the collection at the Multnomah Whiskey Library,
Lovely place.
and I think he's an under-recognized genius.
Yeah.
Incredibly humble, kind man. I met Tommy on Isla on my first training for Bowmore formally. Been before many times, but the first one. Tommy had asked myself and Ian to take care of his guy Jordan, this Australian kid he had working for him with this. And again, when you meet someone you respect and that person finds somebody that they're going to invest in, it's special.
Yeah, of course.
So Jordan is his guy. And
We were actually chatting too on Saturday.
Are you?
We're gonna chat. Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know too much about Jordan at this point, other than Tommy's asked me and Ian to look out for him.
Nice.
Ian spent time formally with him on Isla, and they've got plans to meet in the blending room in our Glasgow property.
Amazing.
So I'm in LA. I'm in Hancock Park outside the cheese shop, which is an incredible place to get a cheese sandwich.
I love cheese.
And the phone rings, and it's it's middle afternoon. So it's like 2:30, so 10:30 in Scotland. And Ian's calling me. He's at his friend's birthday party in Edinburgh. He said, more alcohol than will permit driving. And he's like, that fucking...
You call him a wanker?
Well, I'm sorry, I realized I just swore. So I was
don't care.
okay. Anyway, he several expletives about this kid Jordan. And I was like, what's wrong? He's like, he's in Glasgow and he can't find a hotel room. Now, what had happened was Bruce Springsteen was playing Glasgow on this Friday night.
Oh, wow.
And what that meant was that Jordan was the equivalent of the baby Jesus. And he couldn't find or couldn't afford a manger.
Yeah.
So Ian was calling me up to say, is there any chance he could stay at your parents' house? And I was like, of course. So Ian has got 2 cell phones, and he's got me on one, and he calls my mother on the other and flips it, because I'm not on a... I couldn't call. And he puts the 2 phones together, and Jordan ends up getting the train out to my parents' house. It's like, from the centre of Glasgow, it's half an hour on the train, another 15 minutes drive, and he stays at the house. This becomes something that happens a lot. Like, bartenders that I've made connections with over the years that have planned their own trips to Scotland have gone and stayed with my parents, and it helps my parents feel a wee bit closer to me as well.
Yeah.
My mother's incredible for hospitality. My dad's great on a one-on-one conversation.
Yeah.
And my mother will feed you to death. So they've enjoyed having these
People
groups
to
come
take
in.
care of in a
But
way,
Jordan
right?
was the first.
No kidding.
He was the absolute first. And then I've spent a lot of time working with him over the years. He's helped me on countless numbers of seminars when he was an independent spokesperson for the whole industry through his role at the library. So he takes this job and he signs up for this. It's an incredible opportunity for him. I think he's got a really great road in front of him.
Yeah.
They're very open to, from a production side, teaching him, which so few ambassadors get that accessibility to their production team. So he's in a really good spot. He signs me up for this seminar tomorrow, and he didn't actually tell us until the end of December. And we didn't actually have a discussion on the content until last week.
Yeah.
So he's an absolute wee shite.
It's you, Jordan. Who's the third?
Robin Nance.
It's Robin. Oh, amazing. Yeah. So Akintoshin back to home with it, right?
Yeah, so the irony, we've got an Australian representing America, we've got a Scotsman representing Japan, and we have legally she's American, but she was born in Japan, and she's representing Scotland. So I've got no idea how it's going to go.
I don't even know how to straighten this out.
Well, let's just be clear. Jordan is entirely ill prepared. He didn't ask his co-presenters whether they were going to be involved.
Yeah.
I actually just flew back from LA. I was here the beginning half of the week.
That's right. You've been back and
I had an event in LA last night, so I've flown to San Antonio, gone home, and flown back.
Yeah.
And I'm leaving tomorrow after the seminar.
That's crazy.
He's a disreputable, inefficient, clumsy, big horse of a boy. He's like
this is the best research ever.
He's
for
like one of those. He's like one of those dogs that runs into trees.
Yes.
You know, it's really friendly and cuddly, and I love
use
this
the
dog.
word doofy.
Yep, covered. So he's we got on a call, and I was like, so what's the plan? And he said, oh well, we're malt focused in 3 countries, and I was like, yeah, but do you have anything revolutionary to say about malt? Because last time I checked, there's not one of us is a scientist. We're all really good brand educators, but we're not science people. We can't, do you have new information on malt? And he didn't. So we're going to base it around having the 6 best whiskeys that we could bring. He's bringing 2, and a lot of conversation, and probably me giving him a really, really hard time.
I really hope so.
But Robin and him are going to gang up on me. It's inevitable.
Big personalities.
I'm okay with it.
Good.
It'll balance out.
I think so too. The last question, which maybe this will go in a film direction, maybe this will go in a whiskey direction, but let's just say you're sipping your favorite whiskey, one of your favorite whiskeys. It doesn't matter which one. That's not really the point. You're at your parents' house, and you can have a conversation and a dram with anybody, living or deceased. Who would you love to just be in a warm, hospitable place and sip a whiskey with and have an amazingly insightful conversation with?
I still have an answer to this question. It's a kind of dinner party question that comes up.
Sure.
And it's been so long since congratulations, it's like Throwback Tuesday. I thought you were going to go somewhere else, and I'm going to slate you for it. I thought you were going to go, what's your favorite whiskey?
No, fuck that shit. Come on.
There's so many great and interesting people in this world.
Sure.
Richard Branson's always been someone that kind of stood out to me.
Really?
Yeah.
Exceptional guy. Seems accessible too. Like he'd be fun to just hang out with.
He actually. So strangely, I've been on the dance floor with him.
Really?
And I'm gonna say ill-fated dating experience with one of his former employees.
Always is.
In that she slept with most of my friends.
Oh fuck.
And I'm saying that because if she ever hears this, she knows who she is. And my friends all know who she is as well. Take that. She worked for him, and he did a summer garden party series.
Yeah.
So everybody can't be off on the same day. But he would pull all the employees in to his property,
sure,
south of London somewhere. There would be buses leaving from all over the south of England. You would come in. There would be food vendors. There would be a stage in the middle. It'd be like going to a festival,
sure,
right? With one stage, and he would have bands that he'd booked to come in, and he'd be on stage and he'd be in the crowd dancing, and he just seems like somebody who really knows how to make connections with people.
Yeah,
but he's also looking for those opportunities. There's a spirit in him that I think is incredible, in that when you read about his story, from selling records to building an airline to what he's doing with like train lines at the moment was the latest one I heard, he's trying to do a 30-minute train line from LA to Vegas.
Jesus.
Like, he just seems like he's got it dialed in, and he's got the right people around him. So he's definitely someone I've read a lot about. But I have someone else. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
The greatest man on the planet right now for me is Sir Alex Ferguson, the former Manchester United manager.
Really?
I think he's one of the most incredible leaders of people ever created. And
would you drink a jam with him?
I don't think I would be drinking, because I think I would be listening to anything he had to say.
Yeah.
He has look him up on YouTube, listen to him talk. He's been involved in doing a lot of like business study courses.
Right.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Fergie first, and if Fergie's not available, I'll take Branson as a second. Okay.
Yeah, just meager Branson.
Yeah.
As a number 2.
Yeah.
We went all over the place. I mean, this is lovely. We talked about fatherhood, Scotland.
It's your show.
Film.
You're the guide. So
I know it's my fault, isn't it?
No.
No. Brilliant. Finally getting to sit down and talk about this stuff and sip some cognac. Who would have thought? It's a whiskey conversation. We're sipping some cognac. I like that a lot. And I'm glad that I get to share this bottle with you, man.
Well, we will have plenty of opportunities to drink whiskey, but there's just one time where you can introduce me to cognac. So
yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Godspeed on the conversation this Saturday at the conference. I will absolutely give Jordan a lot of shit. Don't worry. Is that fair?
Pull them apart. Pull them apart.
As you say blankly, destroy him. It's like a Rocky maneuver, right?
What?
It's like from Rocky 3 when you've got like Dolph Lundgren.
So I don't understand your accent. What did you say before that?
You.
We'll crush you. You will crush him?
No, not yeah.
Good.
I don't want to. I'm a really nice guy, but we'll see what happens. John.
Crush him. Like
Fair.
a worm.
Perfect, wise words. Thanks, Johnny. We'll talk soon, yeah?
Cheers, man. Take care.
So there we have it, Mr. Johnnie Mundell. Brilliant life, brilliant gent. I remember the first time I met him, I was here in Austin, Texas at 7 grand for a whiskey class from Beam-Suntory. Johnny is a tall, dominating figure in the classroom. He makes you feel uncomfortable, as I mentioned in the intro. He makes you feel engaged. When is he going to call on me? I mean, this is the kind of interesting context, interesting feeling that he brings to all of his education, and it's amazing. It's not an act. I mean, he's a brilliant guy. He knows so much about whiskey, and if you get the opportunity to sit in one of those classes and one of those educational seminars with him, it's just miraculous. The kinds of things you'll learn because you just are paying so much attention. So talking about his life, talking about film, talking about fatherhood, all of these amazing things. I apologize. It took me so long to put this conversation out. But you know what? It's a good time because Beam-Suntory this past week just announced Haku vodka that they'll be making and Roku gin. So you can see even more amazing spirits out of the Japanese distillery Suntory. So it's great timing. And you know what? Just enjoy the chat. It's a great opportunity to learn more about so many things. So thanks everybody for listening to Show to V with Mike G. No matter how much you're enjoying seeing Ted Danson in The Good Place, or you're thinking, God damn it, I cannot now wait any longer for the new Halloween movie and Halloween season in general, please, you can